The following program discusses sensitive issues related to addictive behavior. Parents are cautioned that some material may be too candid for younger children.
My guest today is like my sister, but just imagine being surrounded by addicts, grandmother in and out of jail, mother shooting up meth, and you're 6 years old. She had to decide to survive at that age. How did she do it? We'll find out today in the cafe. Welcome to Celebrating Life and Recovery. I'm Cheri, your host. Come join us. You know, it's interesting to me. There was a time in my life I'm going to church, and I love church. And it's ridiculous because I wasn't raised like that. My background is really crazy, but I love my church family. So I'm going to church, and I ended up going down a different street than I normally go down. And I live in an old country town, and I'm going down this different street, and I passed this strip club. And it was crazy because as I passed, I looked up and this kid is walking in. I think she's like 16 years old, and she's walking in, obviously going to start her shift. And I thought, I cannot believe I haven't even said hi. You know, I've never thought about going there. I've never thought about, you know, I wonder if I could just say hi and kind of talk about my life, or just say hi, just get to know her or anybody that works there. And so I'm going to church, and I'm thinking of that, and I'm feeling bad because my family's all strung out. My family has various addictions. My sister was raised in strip clubs. My other sister's a meth addict. I mean, they have all of that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking about this all the way to church, and I get to church, and I'm trying to just sit there and wait for the sermon or wait for Sabbath school and all that kind of stuff. And in my mind, I'm thinking, man, I wish maybe I could go back there. And all the sound equipment breaks, right? And somebody says, we're going to fix the sound. Does anybody have a story or something to say while we're waiting for someone to fix the sound? And I'm like, I do. And I did. And not only did I have a story, as I wanted you to pray. Because you know what? When I leave here, I'm going to go to that strip club. And I'm serious. I'm looking like Mary Poppins. I'm all dressed up. So I'm going to go to the strip club. So when I leave here, I'm going to go talk to that girl at the strip club. So would you pray for me? And the entire church looked the same way, like, can you do that on the Sabbath? And it was like they were shocked. I could see in their faces, like, I don't know if you could kind of do that on the Sabbath. And I thought, oh, stop. I just want prayer, right? So I'm asking someone to pray, and I can't wait till the sermon's over now because I have a plan. I literally have a plan. So I get back in my car, and on Sabbath, and I end up at this strip club, and it was called the Nickel something. It was the sleaziest place you've ever seen, just a tiny little kind of shed in the middle of nowhere. And so I start to go into this club, and what was funny about going into this club is I get there, and this guy is standing at the door, and he says there's a cover charge. And I'm like, really? You were going to charge me to walk in here? You should pay me. It was such a, you know, I'm just laughing. And I'm thinking, I don't want anyone, because I'm surrounded by Sabbath keepers, I don't want anyone to say, well, you can't buy and sell on the Sabbath. I'm thinking I'm paying the cover charge. So I pay to get in, right? And then I go sit down. And the guy says, it'd be a 2-drink minimum. Stop, you're killing me. I'm just trying to talk to this girl, right? So 2 drinks. So I ordered a couple 7-Ups, and now the girls are dancing. And inside a strip club, when the lights are off, you can play it off like this is kind of a nice little bar. When the lights go on, it is horrible looking. But I'm sitting there, I've got my 7-Ups, I'm doing whatever, and the owner finally comes in, and it's like, what are you doing here? Because at first they thought I was working for the bank, maybe fixing the ATM machine. You know what I mean? Because I don't fit. I don't look like I would be in there during the day, all that kind of stuff. And so I told him, I said, you know what? I was funneled into a $32 million industry when I was 13 years old on the streets of LA. There are 80,000 kids on the streets right now. In any major city, you're going to find them. And I just saw this girl walk in this morning, and I just wanted to say hi, just say, you know, who I am. And he says that wasn't okay with him. But he did say something to me that, Cheri, I don't do this to hurt anyone. And I said, I know. And I knew he was telling the truth. He wasn't out to hurt anyone. This was his business. And we kind of became friends. I gave him a book. We talked a little bit. And I said, but it does hurt people, you know? And I got up and left. He didn't really want me to talk to the girls while they were dancing. He didn't want me to kind of jump in and interfere with the day. But I left. And as I'm walking out, I said in my head, God, someday, let this be a church. Just in my head. I get sent away for a couple weeks after that. And I'm you know, on a gig, and I come back, and then I'm out again. And I travel a lot, so I'm out a number of times. By the time I make it back to church, time has passed. And someone said, Cheri, did you hear what happened to that club that we prayed about? And I'm like, no. And on New Year's Eve, somebody had a fight in the parking lot. They killed someone in the parking lot. Then the IRS and everybody started checking this person's books. The club gets shut down. And their liquor license was actually pulled, all of that stuff. And so now it's nothing. As time has gone by, it went from nothing to a pool hall, from a pool hall to nothing again. My feeling is someday it's going to be a church. And so what I thought during that time is that sometimes people's lives are not changed because we forget to pray for them. Sometimes we look at whole people groups, areas of town, all of that kind of stuff, and we don't take time to slow down and say, God, please cover them. Be with them. And so what I want to say right now, I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine when we come back, and I want you to know, don't judge anyone. If you don't like a business that's in town, pray for that. If you think somebody is being damaged, go talk to them. But don't just drive by. Because, you know, we're not in that time anymore. It's not time to drive by. It's time to change lives. And today, I can't wait, because you're going to see a life that was changed, and you're going to want to kiss God all over the face, because it's amazing. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
The following program discusses sensitive issues related to addictive behavior. Parents are cautioned that some material may be too candid for younger children.
Welcome back. My next guest, Stacey Bekkela. I just have to say, when I first met her, it was during a time in my life that I actually was afraid. I'd just been diagnosed with cancer. I don't know what I'm going to do with that, how I'm going to act about that. A friend of mine, Jim Moon, is a pastor, was going to come in and do an anointing, and so Stacy and Aaron come, and I know their background. You know, their background is coming from, you know, kind of an alternative background like mine. They've been damaged. They've worked in or owned strip clubs and all of that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, when I realized that they're going to be in the room during this prayer, during this anointing, when Stacy, for one, I want to say welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
When you were in the room and I looked up and I thought, you know what, I feel like I'm looking up at my sister. I think I'm looking up at somebody that knows me well. And I said, Stacy, would you pray for me for this cancer stuff? And you look scared to death.
I was terrified, very honored, but very terrified.
What scared you about that?
Not knowing what to say, having to speak out loud, because my prayers were always silent.
Right. And I know at that point, because you were so new, it's like, am I good enough? Do I have the right to approach God?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's been an issue for me my whole life, just not feeling worthy, not feeling good enough, and certainly that situation, there was no difference.
I recognize that look in your face. I mean, as I said that, I recognize that, and I wanted to grab you on the face, and I think I did say to you, everyone in this room has something to say, and they're here because they love me. They're here because they want to help and they want to pray. But I thought, you know, Stacy, you know me. We're from the same background. Mm-hmm. I would be honored if you prayed, and you did. It was so cool.
Oh, I was just crying so hard, and putting the oil all over your head and thinking, oh, her roots are going to be so greasy. But
I gotta say, so now
I didn't know where to place the oil.
Yeah,
I really didn't.
I want to be anointed, right? And that was the funniest thing. I wasn't going to call you out on that, but now that you mention it, it was so funny because I wanted to be anointed, and so I looked at the pastor and I said, "Can she anoint me, right? And I just felt like it was so God, and can she anoint me? And I handed you the oil, and you looked at me like, I have no idea, and then you just poured the whole thing on me.
I wanted to make sure we used enough.
Yeah. Make sure that this is right.
Right.
I love you.
Yeah, I wanted to do my best, but yeah, it was a scary thing, just not knowing what to say. And
from that day to this day, I'm honored to know you.
I am honored to know you.
I have to just say, I want you to kind of walk us through your life. You know, because you had a life that was so, there's no reason you should be sitting here looking as healthy and beautiful as you look. So who were you? Who was your family? How did you grow up?
So I grew up in Arkansas with a family similar to your family. Everybody doing drugs. My mother pregnant with me at 15 with my father abusing her. Finally, she got out of that and went to live with her mother, my grandmother. And I must have been maybe
all in a big house.
4. Yeah, all in a bigger home. I was about 4 years old at the time. I just remember my grandma having these wild parties. She didn't want me to call her grandma, for one thing, because she was an awful young lady to be a grandmother at the time. And
she was embarrassed by the whole thing. Like, I don't want someone to think I'm
know
old.
she loved me, but yeah, she was embarrassed to be called grandma in front of all of her friends. That, you know, she'd throw these big parties, and, you know, smoking pot in front of me was just normal, just what you did in front of children. They would go to the other room to do other things, or send me out of the room to do the other things.
Right.
Certainly knew that other things were going on pretty early on.
So you're talking about pot, probably meth, probably all of that
cocaine.
stuff. And for some people, they will say, I just don't get that world. But you know, I've seen on Facebook where somebody's actually smoking some weed and blowing it into the face of a 1-month-old or a small baby. So that's some people's life. This is my life.
Yeah, and that was my life growing up. And in elementary school, I really loved school, was good in school. And sometimes I saw it as just a nice, safe place to go. But there was...
I could be normal here.
Right, there was quite a bit of education when I was in elementary school toward drug awareness. Drugs are bad. And so I just remember thinking, wow, well, then my family is bad. And I had a grandmother on one side of my family that would take me to church with her, and so I was saved, and I knew Jesus from a pretty early age. I would say maybe 8. I was baptized, and
at 8. So you have a grandma here that says, you know, man, somebody's got to reach into this kid's life. You've got a grandma here saying, don't call me grandma, and I'm just high all the time. And you've got a school saying, just say no to drugs.
I
drugs
had
are
a lot
bad.
going on, yeah. Absolutely.
I can't even imagine this kid's head spinning. You know,
I remember riding on my bicycle through the trailer parks, you know, just talking with Jesus, you know, and that was very comforting.
Yeah. What did you say to him? Do you remember any of those conversations?
Sometimes they would just be conversations that I would have with anybody, just a friend. He was such a friend.
So now you are literally learning to adapt wherever you're at.
Oh, absolutely. I've always said, doesn't matter what crowd it was, I could fit in anywhere. Older crowd, you know, more of a roughneck type crowd. I could pretty much fit in wherever I needed to fit in.
Right. You could
and
be
feel
whatever someone wanted you to be.
Absolutely, and I could feel fine with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what happened next? Because that's so far, it has got to be just crazy for this kid.
My mother, she ended up doing drugs. I was very young at the time. I'm going to guess I was 1 or 2. And she went from, you know, just doing maybe here or there at my grandma's parties to a full-blown 30-something year habit that's ruined her health. And
Meth addiction.
Meth was her drug of choice. It sure was.
Because, you know, for someone that's not been in that world, meth takes you to some really dark places, and you give up your sanity.
You do.
And so when you watched your mom, what were the changes that you noticed in her?
For several years, not anything major. But I would say the biggest changes were when it just became so unstable. She couldn't hold a job or provide. You know, you'd come home and there'd be things that were pawned, or no electricity, or no food in the home. So then about 6th grade rolled around and I went and lived with several different family members. My grandmother had went away to the penitentiary for drugs. And that, believe it or not, was like she was the stable one, is what I saw her as, even though come to find out years later, you know, she's doing drugs with my mother and possibly the one that turned her on to the drugs. And
But as a kid, she held the family together.
As a kid, she seemed all together. She was a nurse for the state. She, you know, presented well. You would have never known, if you didn't know those things, you wouldn't know. And she went away, I might have been in the 5th grade, 6th grade, and my mother fell apart. And then I went to live with my great-grandparents, and going to church again, and just, you know, having meals provided, and just the normalcy of it all.
Right.
Then my mother came back to get me when the school year was over, and it's a really hard thing to talk about.
What makes it hard?
Just I know I cried for about 3 weeks every day.
Because all of a sudden she comes in.
Because I had to go back.
And just
I remember the song on the radio that her boyfriend was playing was like a Highway to Hell song or something, and I thought, and I was just crying in the back seat, and nobody even turned around. Are you okay?
Yeah, nothing. And I feel like I am on that highway.
Yeah.
I have no choice.
And then when we get there, it's another trailer park, and that's fine, people, you know, but it was just a tough time. And they were really lost in their addictions, because by this point she started abusing drugs with needles, and she got really paranoid, and she would hang towels up on all of any small window. She would cover every window, blankets or whatever.
Because somebody's looking, somebody's seeing us.
Right, and not allow me to go outside of the home, or you know, it was a really, really hard time for me. And she agreed to let me go to church. So there was a church bus that would come and pick me up, but that was the only place that I could go was church. And then when school started, school.
I wish right now that we, you know, and we get a picture when you say, I'm in a trailer, there's towels and cardboard and stuff on the windows. It is filthy. They are paranoid. They're slamming drugs. And I'm trying to figure out as a kid. And when you say blood on the ceiling, explain why. Because I know what you're saying, but why blood on the ceiling?
It's part of the whole shooting up process. You know, you pull out, and if you're not held off right, I guess it just goes squirting.
And so as a kid,
it was just, I didn't understand as a kid why there was blood on the ceiling, or why certain things were like they were, but I found out later on, you know, why those things. But yeah, it just was a really, really dark time.
And so school and church is the only place that you got to escape.
School and church was the only places I could go. And about that time, my grandmother was getting out of the penitentiary. She had served her time. She got out early, actually, so I guess she didn't serve all of her time. And she heard about the living conditions being so poor, and sent my uncle for me, because she was going to be released, and we were going to.
So your bags are packed again?
Well, if I had any bags, I would have packed them. I put what few things I had into a garbage bag and put it in my locker at school. And my uncle was late picking me up. He got stuck in traffic. The plan was for him to come and get me, and then they were going to rescue me and take me back to my grandmother. And he was late coming in, and so I just had to walk home. And I got beat so severely that day, and not by my mother, but by her boyfriend at the time with an extension cord, and it was just awful. But that was enough evidence for the social worker to take pictures, and the courts they couldn't grant custody to my grandmother because she was an ex-felon, but they could grant it to my great-grandparents. And so we had to go that route.
So that was enough that everybody said, okay, it's
By that time I was in the 7th grade, yep. And I mean, I can imagine just how pitiful I had to have looked and even acted, you know.
So when you talked about earlier that I never had a sense that I was worth anything, I never had a sense I belonged, man, you know, you can really see that when you said this was my life. Now I'm in the 7th grade where people are trying to figure out who they are. They're kind of stepping in their own skin, and you're saying, I don't even know where to step.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I belong. Everything I own can fit in a trash bag.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
what happened?
So from there, my grandmother, of course, had gotten out, and she decided to turn her life totally around. She wasn't going to church at the time, but, you know, she wasn't doing drugs either. So it was a start. And I found my best friend in the world, Brandy, and her mother would take her to church, and so she took me, and she just kind of put me under her wing like another daughter. And she would joke about, I should adopt you, you know, and
you're saying,
but she was so good.
Please adopt me.
Yeah, my family used to always tell me, well, mostly in the junior high age, once I had started trying to figure out like how to be, how to act. Oh, you think you're too good for this family. And if I was told that once by my grandmother or by my uncle, never by my mother, but I've been told that a lot of times, and it hurts to hear that.
Right.
But I guess I just kind of tried to pick up the pieces for myself, and I could see how, you know, the other kids were acting, and I was just, all I ever wanted to do was to fit in or to be normal.
Right.
And so I think slowly over time, I just was able to somewhat fake it to make it, if you will, but always so insecure.
Right.
Even today, still is a...
Something that plagues you even today.
Always,
Which I don't
always.
get it, because I love you. I wish I could shake it out of you, and I know that only God himself
I wish
can.
you could too.
But
Yeah.
I definitely would. So now you're in high school. You are faking it. And what I want to say about that, just because I've been in your skin, not exactly, but somewhat. When you fake it, you always feel like a fraud. You always feel like somebody is going to find out.
Yeah,
So
sure.
that's how you're kind of going through high school.
Oh, yeah.
Did you jump into drugs or alcohol?
Not in high school.
Okay.
I was accused of that by my family.
Yeah.
You know, because I was blowing my nose in the bathroom one day, and my uncle says, "Oh, well, you better not be putting stuff up your nose." Or I'm like, I've never even tried that. I wasn't doing any of those things. Really good kid, making great grades. And my grandmother, I think she truly did the best she could do at the time, but she wasn't easy to live with.
Right.
And I moved,
Because of all her craziness.
right, and I moved out at 16, and I tried my first hard drug at 18. It just everything kind of from there spiraled, you know. the drugs, the dancing. I mean, it just all at once.
So you literally step in. So you've got now you're on your own. You're living with different folks, and you start trying drugs. And you know, with somebody with that history, family history, then you are set up because usually the first drug you try, you're going to be lost in it.
Yep. And I thought I could handle it at first, but I don't think it was possible to just handle that because I was self-medicating without knowing that I was self-medicating.
Explain to somebody what that means.
I guess at the time it made me feel more normal. And I didn't think about not that I spent a lot of time at that age dwelling on the past, because I didn't face all of these things until my mid-20s, like as far as getting help for them, but just kind of made me feel normal. And then once I was addicted, then I just had to have it. And
can I ask you if this was true for you?
Sure.
Is that the first time I took a drug, I didn't feel like killing myself. I didn't feel odd. I felt like somehow I was going to be okay and I was going to make it. And it was like somebody turned a light on and it was all good. Did you feel any of that?
I felt a very huge sense of normalcy.
Yeah. Where somebody says that drugs would make you feel not normal. That's not true.
Well, the first time I ever did it, I thought, well, I don't feel all, loopy, and it was a little scary looking back on it.
Yeah, I don't feel depressed.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely, and I spent 5 years doing hard drugs.
Hard drugs?
Pretty much every day. Mostly meth, sometimes cocaine.
So, and even just
marijuana was just thrown in the mix daily. No, not alcohol, but for me, not alcohol, but yes, marijuana and meth mainly.
So you got meth going on, and meth, what it does for people that don't know this, it literally, all of your neurochemistry, all of your feel-good hormones, all of your stuff that makes you feel alive gets flooded. So instead of like a little drip in your brain, it's like a fire hydrant gets turned on, and you feel amazing. So for a kid that's never bonded, for a kid that has never felt that way, it will rob you eventually, but that initial blast of, I feel good, hooks you.
Absolutely.
So you, next 5 years, lost in that.
Yeah, for 5 years.
Did you graduate school, high school?
I made it to the middle of my 11th grade year and dropped out.
So how did you make a living?
Started dancing when I was 18.
In
I waitressed here and there up to that point, making pretty decent money waitressing, but I remember going into a club with some friends, never had been in one before, thinking, oh, well, I could probably do that too, like, never even occurred to me, and that's the long and short of how I discovered a club.
I could imagine that all of a sudden you've got this, you're a kid that never felt like I could do anything, that I'm not worth anything, but you're now sitting in a strip club doing math with friends saying, I could do this.
Yeah, it just seemed too easy in the beginning. Like I said, when I walked through the door with friends and thought, well, I guess I could do this too. The first time, of course, I was really nervous, but moving on from that, it wasn't anything super scary, and
the money's good?
The money was good.
I don't have to rely on anyone else?
And I convinced myself, well, I'm not doing a lap dance, nobody's touching me.
Right.
I would tell myself these things, but really it was picking hairs. Because it was very damaging to me, whether or not I realized it at the time, being in it for 5 years.
So when you step into that world, because I know that eventually you meet and marry one of the owners of the clubs. So talk about that.
Well, he and I were both dating people that weren't so nice. We referred to them as psychos because they were not so nice.
I've dated them. Oh, sorry.
And
because in that world, when you say that, you know, because everybody has so many issues in that world, but when you say psychos.
Oh, we really, really mean psychos.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. I feel like my psycho was a little more psycho than his, but that's okay. We don't have to debate that. One day he just jokingly walked over, and I was sitting at the bar having a Dr. Pepper, and he says, we ought to run off, leave our psychos behind, and get married. Just joking, you know. He was totally joking, and I laughed it off, not thinking anything of it. But through the years, we became really good friends, and so once I decided to step out from the guy I was with, that was so terrible. I went over to my husband now, Aaron. His brother had a house in the town where I was working, and I thought, well, great, my psycho does not know where this location is.
So it was a safe house.
It was a safe house. Went and got my cat, and that's all I really needed, me and my cat and my clothes. And so yeah, it was a safe house. And
so at the time, are you still doing meth, still using?
Yes, but trying not to. I mean, for years I tried not to. I got lost in it, and I'd say within the first year, easy, I thought, wow, I'm like having a hard time not doing this. So, I mean, I was always trying to stop, and I just didn't know how.
Right.
In fact, when Aaron and I first met, he had no idea. He just figured that I smoked a little pot. No idea.
He drinks, but he wasn't a meth user.
He never did drugs, yeah. So he didn't really know exactly what to look for.
Right.
But yes, I had a pretty serious problem, and people started telling him, well, don't you know that she has a problem? And I mean, he really didn't know the extent of it.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
You know, she's fine, we're fine.
And I used to say that, and I still sometimes still say it, I feel like Aaron saved me from myself at the time, because I came out to live in Colorado with him shortly after. We fell in love really fast, and although we knew each other for years, it just kind of all moved really fast, and I thought, well, moving 1,000 miles away from people I know, that kind of saves me from doing that. And there were a few times that I did relapse when I would go back to Little Rock, but yeah, it was.
So you know what's really crazy to me? So you guys fall in love, move in together. There was a time when God actually starts coming into the picture. What did that look like? And I think it came through Aaron first.
Right. Aaron knew that I knew Jesus as a child. So when he started reading the Bible while his dad was really sick,
his brother gives him a Bible.
His brother gave him a Bible, the first one that got out of the clubs. He gave him a Bible and asked him, would you just please read this? And so Aaron did. He picked it up. He had a lot going on in life, his father being so sick. And so I would just make sure that I would have the kids up towards the front part of the house, so he had a peaceful area to read, because I really wanted for something to get through. I always knew there was a missing piece.
Amen.
And what I felt like it was pretty close to perfect life that we were living.
So by this time,
my dream life.
He's working in a club. You're still working in a club. You have a couple kids.
Nope.
You're home.
Actually, when Aaron and I got together, when we met in the club and when we fell in love, he was like, I do not want my girlfriend working in the club. Shortly thereafter, we were engaged, and so no, I quit at that time, and I was a stay-at-home mom for about 10 years. Thank you. Thank you. I'm like,
Yeah. Amen.
Yes, I adore them. So I was a stay-at-home mom. He was working in the club, and you know, his brother gave him the Bible, and he sat down and started reading it. And I always made sure, let's kind of keep it peaceful. Dad is reading, and what I'd tell the kids, and we made sure that he had some time to read, because it was really important to me. I knew that was the only piece that I could possibly be missing, because I had everything I ever dreamed of. I never thought I could have. I never really thought I could have a husband that wonderful and that amazing. Yeah.
And a home that's stable. I mean, you know, people take that for granted, but some folks, the first time you walk in and you know, this is my home and it's good and it's a sanctuary for me, that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to say I felt like his childhood was pretty normal compared to mine, but I don't know how you can really compare one bad to another bad.
Right.
But I always thought his was more normal, if you will.
So you're watching him, and he actually is starting to change, starting to look at, you know, who is God and who am I and what do I want to do in my life?
Yep. And then
what do you think?
I'm thinking this is awesome. He's finding God too. And I always knew I drifted away and I needed to get back. And I wanted to get back. And so when we had a flyer come through the mail for a Creation to Revelation seminar, and Aaron was joking, we might ignite in the seats, you know. And
should we go?
And I said, I would really like to go, and we agreed, let's go. And we were just on fire. Like, we couldn't have been out of the club any sooner. Like,
that's
yesterday was too long, you know, kind of thing. And always knew we didn't want to raise our family having a bar. That wasn't something that we wanted to be part of our life, so yeah.
I don't want my girl to be dancing in a club.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, and it's weird because there's a point in your life you start to think about that kind of stuff. So you go to this Revelation seminar. You are walking into a church, the both of you, I just want to smile. I just want to say, I love the way God does that. And I love the way God, as our Father, as our Redeemer, says, this is exactly where you need to be right now. I'm so proud of you. And you come walking in, you hear the Word of God, you hear revelations, you hear teaching.
We learned a whole lot because it was a Bible seminar. So I feel like it was about a 30-day seminar, roughly around 30 days. So, I mean, we really got into the Word of God, and I mean, just on fire for the Lord. Just on fire. And we met you around that time, and yeah.
I got to actually come to your baptism. It was amazing, amazing.
I felt so honored to have you there. None of my family came out.
Yeah, wait, I came out.
Yeah, you did, and it meant the world to me.
And what's really crazy is, as fast as your lives changed from that point on, is God just started revealing himself one way after another after another. And you had some powerhouses that came around you as mentors. It was amazing to watch, even with the guy that baptized you, with Jim Moon, with all of those. I mean, they really stood around you and said, I'm honored to be standing here with you right now.
Oh, they were so amazing. All of them. They were just so amazing.
Can I say what you gave me during your baptism?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So I get to fly in. And I felt like, I don't know if I would have missed that for anything, but I get to fly in, and I felt like the Holy Spirit, you lit up the room. I mean, I have never seen, if I didn't see that little girl running around the trailer park, I saw her right there and just lit up the room. I mean, you were so excited to have you and God and being baptized and all of that stuff. And at one point, she gives me something that she wanted to gift me with during the baptism, and it was her medical marijuana card. And I still have that. I look at that once in a while because I think that what you were saying is symbolically, even though I can legally get this, I'm symbolically saying to God, I really do want to surrender all. I don't know what that's going to look like.
I didn't know how.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to surrender that. Like, I thought, well, I did hard drugs for so long. This is not a huge deal to do this, and I do have a card for it. I am
it's legal.
Right. And I just didn't know how to not do that anymore. I had been doing that longer than I had not been.
Right.
So Pastor Joe says, well, you just have to say, I can't do it, Jesus, do it for me. And that is what I said out in my garage, dumping it into the dumpster. I can't do it, Jesus, do it for me. And dumping it in.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to throw it away. And I had done that before. I had thrown everything away and only to go back to it. And It really was turning it over and saying, I can't do it for myself. You're going to have to do it for me.
When you
And
handed,
thanking him.
when you
all the
handed
time.
me
Thank
that,
you, Jesus.
I just wanted to laugh out loud. I wanted to kiss God on the face. I wanted to say, in the midst of our craziness, God is saying, I've never left her and will never leave her. And you know, there's times that we end up relapsing and we stumble around, and God says, that's okay. I'll stand you back up. We're okay. And when you handed me that card, I knew that what you were saying to God and to the people that loved you is, you know, I'm surrendering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Such
And
a
it
cool
felt
day.
good. It felt really good because I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off. Because when you try so hard and it's just you without Jesus doing it through you,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you can make it for a while, but you really, the long term is through Jesus.
It was so cool. So I'm gonna open it up for questions, and I'm gonna get back to it because I know that there are a lot of changes. And from that time of leading you guys to a place where you guys are in a seminar, being baptized, surrendering everything, let's just stay with that for a minute, because you and Aaron both walked into a relationship with God, but he still owns clubs at this time. You guys are still in that whole lifestyle, and there was a lot of changes that happened.
There were.
So, and it happened really quickly, it seemed like.
Yeah, lots of changes, you know, lifestyle changes, even just downsizing. We both went back to school. Both were in school at the same time using the same computer without Wi-Fi. How crazy is that? But we made it through.
You know, you said something to me and I just laughed. It's like, you know, just, Stacy, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And do you remember that conversation?
What did I say at the
I want to
time?
be a vet.
Oh, did I say that?
Yeah.
I love animals.
Yeah.
My passion.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And so when you
Absolutely.
went back to school, did you go in that direction?
Yes. So I went back to school and I thought, well, if I could do anything, what would it be? I thought, well, I don't want to go to school for so many years to become a veterinarian. It takes a long time. It's hard to get into the school.
Right.
So I decided a vet tech. So I'm a certified vet tech today, and I work with small animal.
I
Yep.
love that. When people say that God says, you know what, I'll give you the desires of your heart, I'll literally, you trust me, and somebody says, but does he know what my desires are? Yes.
Absolutely.
You know, he knew from the time you ran around as a kid. And speak on this a bit, and then we'll open it up for questions. But some people say, well, was it God's fault that all this happened to you as a kid?
Absolutely not. Not God's fault that all those things happened. I think that when he made us of free will,
Amen. Everybody
you know,
has
sin
choice.
is in the world, and looking back on it, I know that Jesus was always by my side.
And always trying to get the people around us to do the right thing.
Absolutely.
You know, my family is amazing. I love them. But in their addictions, they are hurtful to each other. But these are incredible folks, very funny, very real. And so it's like, you know, I think that God sometimes steps right in front of us over and over and over. Get away from your addictions. They're robbing you of your kids. They're robbing you of your family. And when somebody finally decides to do that fight, like you decided to fight and to stand up and encourage even your husband to have that quiet time and find God. Somebody decides to do that fight, everything changes.
And it's not always easy. The road isn't always easy, but it's very worthwhile.
Amen.
And it can be a lot easier if you just let Jesus in.
If you just surrender
Just let him in.
earlier every time. So I'm going to open it up for questions because I know that there's a couple people here. Definitely, Aaron, I love you, and you're hearing Stacy talk about, you know, her journey, and you were a part of that with her. But you know, do you have any comment or question that you would like to say to her right now, to share with her?
You know, I think the first thing that I would say, as much as anything, is thank you. Thank you for sticking with me, because she'll make it sound like it was so easy and it was so like just taking the kids or whatever, but she was patient with me for years. And so thank you. Thank you very much. And I think as far as a question would go is where do you see the value now? Where you're concerned, where your life has brought you to, and then, like, more importantly, where do you see the value going on into the future?
Would be one of the biggest things that I feel value for. Having a stable home, teaching our children about Jesus, putting the desire into their hearts to want to learn more about Jesus.
So even the grace, the love of God.
The patience, the friendship. You know, I've told the kids before, little things here or there, you know, maybe they're scared to sleep in their bed at night when they're really small. You know, just talk to Jesus. When I was a little girl, I was scared too, but it helped me just to know I have a friend always by my side. Mm-hmm. So I think that's huge.
You know what's really interesting when you say that, Stacy, and Aaron, I just adore both of you. But when you say that, I think that as a kid, nobody really fought for you. And what you're saying is that I really want them to know that I'll take time just to make sure that they're safe, to make sure that this home is nurturing to them, to make sure that they know at night they're not by themselves, that there's a God above that loves them. So you really are taking the time that people didn't take with you because of their addictions.
Absolutely. I hope I'm doing a good job. I know I sure do love them more than I've ever loved, you know, so.
I've hung out at your house. Those are good kids. So we have one more comment or question. Jennifer, you have joined us a few times. What do you think about what Stacy has talked about, and do you have any comments or questions for her?
I can say that I can relate to a lot of your journeys through life. A lot of them, and I'm so sorry that you had to go through those journeys in your life. And my question for you would be, how was it when you transitioned your life?
Like I say, sometimes not always easy. I think for me, just having the love of Jesus when I was a child made it a little easier. You know, Aaron never knew Jesus as a child. So, I forgot.
So you can go back to that. Let me just say, I want to go back to what you were saying, Jennifer, because I know that you're kind of saying that I'm transitioning right now, and I don't know how to land. And so what you're asking her right now is to give you something that you can hold on to right now. And so what she's saying is, she's right now making that transition.
I would say, Jesus, I need your help to keep me strong. Can't be strong for myself right now. So please do it for me and work through me. And always thank him. Thank you so much, Jesus.
So if you're saying that to someone, thanks, Jennifer, for that. And what I want to say again, we are new friends. And make sure you call someone. Make sure that you know that there are people around you that would do anything to help you in this transition, and do not do this by yourself. Do you hear what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay.
You can call me anytime. I'll give you my number.
So exchange numbers. We don't do this by ourselves. And when you say, for people that don't know Jesus, and they don't know the love of God, and they don't know that, is being able, until you know that, call someone. Mm-hmm. Until you know that, let other people around you. So if somebody says, you know, you don't know Jesus, and you think, what does that mean? What does that mean? Mm-hmm. Is just let someone else pray for you. Let someone else call you. And it may be as simple as just hanging out. Mm-hmm. Do you hear what I'm saying? Is sometimes just hanging out. During the break, and this is for you, Jennifer, during the break, I asked Lorraine, which is on the set, I asked Lorraine, I know that she crochets, and would you hang out with me one night this week and teach me a bit about crocheting, because my daughter's having a baby and I want to make a blanket. And sometimes it's not hanging out and talking about deep, serious stuff. It's hanging out. It's forming friendship. It's spending that time and connecting with people that are not using and are not psycho. Do you know what I mean? And it's not as complicated as people make it. I need you right now. Jennifer, right now, as flaky as we are, you need us.
I
okay?
do.
All right. So even I want to say that for you to tell your story with someone like her sitting right here, and she's looking at you like, how did you get back to school? You know, how did you, all of a sudden, you have a home and you have your parents and your kids and you're beautiful, and I know that you still feel insecure. I'm going to shake that out of you someday. But, you know, I think that she's seeing you and saying, I'm scared right now.
You have to learn how to crawl before you can walk. So,
Okay.
And if you don't have a good support system, because for me it's like, well, who do I turn to?
Right.
I don't know. Calling on Jesus, he will always be there.
He will always be there. Were you ever scared that you would not make it?
Yes. Yep, and I was also afraid that I would never get close with Jesus again.
Because you're not good enough.
That had probably the biggest part to do with it. Not worthy. Just not worthy.
We're going through this Victory in Jesus book for this whole series on grace, and one of the things it says, and you know, it's like, do we do things to be good enough, or do we become enough because He loves us? You know, and some people get those mixed up. It's like, I want to do more, and I want to be more, and I want to say the right thing, and I don't want to smoke some weed, and I don't want to be doing this or that. And God said, how about if you just know that I absolutely loved you, always, and in that love, you can rest.
Sure does give a piece of comfort to you.
Yeah, it changes everything.
Everything.
We're gonna take a break, and I want to come back and I want to ask you a few things about your journey, and I want you to really kind of speak into the lives of somebody that is saying, I don't know if I can make it. And you know who I'm going to ask you to speak into the life of is it's just family. So we'll be right back, but I want you to think about, as we take this break, is that it is amazing to me who God is trying to change. It's amazing to me when God says, you know what, I promise you, if you are breathing, you are my child, and I died for you. And so it's like, let's not judge anything right now. Let's just know that God is doing the best He can do to get us home, and He's not leaving any of us behind. We'll be right back.
The following program discusses sensitive issues related to addictive behavior. Parents are cautioned that some material may be too candid for younger children.
Welcome back. So, you know, we're listening to you, Stacy, talking about your life and your journey to a place where you now have a home that's safe, and you have kids that have no idea this kind of world. They don't know what it feels like to be around parents that don't love them. You've got all of that kind of stuff. You got Aaron looking at you, and I loved when he looked at you and just said, thank you. Thank you for hanging in there with me. And then you've got Jennifer that's in transition that says, what do you mean? Because, you know, I'm afraid. So even as you say, just turn it over to God, just turn it over to Jesus, that's not as easy for some folks. So when did that get instilled with you? And do you remember a story or something that you can share with us when, even as a kid, that you just got it?
So I remember standing in the kitchen with my great-grandmother, and it was the time when I had to go and live with her. She said to me, she must have been able to see some look in my face, or I don't know, I don't even remember what I must have said, but she says, you know, hon, not everybody out there is bad. The world does have some good people. 'Cause I must have been of the opinion early on that it's just a world full of bad people.
Suspicious of everybody.
Everybody and everything, and I was terrified. And, you know, she was a helping hand to say not everybody is bad. And it's very true. There are some good people.
You know, I love when you say that, because there's a part of us, especially in transition, especially as we're changing lifestyles, is I have to look for those people that not are perfect, but they're just good. They're just nice folks. They're very real. And when we start talking about reaching out and calling somebody and doing all that kind of stuff, is I have to know that they're out there. And I don't care if I see 1,000 people. Out of that 1,000 people, there's going to be 1 or 2 people in there that you know, if I ask Jesus, if I ask God, who do I call? He'll point him out. So she taught you that really young.
She did. And, you know, and that was even after I had found the Lord, you know, like I said, around the age of 8. And I just had been through so many things the next several years that followed. I found myself back down to the feeling hopeless. And as a child, I mean, my children are so full of hope. I'm sure that had to have really been hard for my great-grandmother to see that look of despair.
In a little 8-year-old.
And, oh, sure.
Or younger.
Yeah, so
So you know that I have family, you have family that are still really lost. What would you want to say to them? We have just a few seconds left.
Don't give up hope. I'd say just don't give up hope. There's a God out there that is crazy about you and I and everyone. And just seek out those people that are willing to help to hold you up. You certainly know the ones that are harmful, and stay away from those people. And
be wise about that.
Yep, you have to, you know, use your brain to figure out who to stay away from. But yeah, just seek out those that are willing to help you.
So again, I can't believe you're on the program. I love you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I love what you said, Stacy, and I just want you to hear that out here too, is that never give up. We've come from some of us, some pretty dark places, some pretty intense places, but God never gives up on us. Let's not give up on the people we love, and when somebody is transitioning, walk alongside of them. Until next time, always remember that God is crazy about you. Me too. God bless.